Hi, this is Kathy Quinn with Floriani. Floriani is a division of R&K Distributing, and I want to welcome you to this month's Progressive Classroom number 31. This month we're going to look at text. I feel like text is probably the feature anyone uses more in software than any other. We love to add text to things, whether we're doing a quilt label, a scripture, a recipe, or we're just adding fun text to designs we already have. Text is key. So I wanted to look through the different features of our text this month to kind of get you to understand all there is to do with text, plus ways that we have to work with text sometimes. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to come up to the T for text. If I left mouse click on it, it shows me my options to start typing. I can do straight text. I can do circle text. I can do vertical frame text where it's vertical. I can do text on a path. We can actually create our own text paths, which is pretty cool. You've got monogram text. You also have true type font artwork. Now this T that you see here is our Lettering Master program. And you may or may not have purchased that as a add-in or standalone, but we're not going to look at it today. We're going to look at what is contained within FTCU. If there's time, I may add in a little bit about our Lettering Master program. So I am just going to left mouse click on straight text. Now you notice there is an A stuck to my cursor, so that's telling me, Kathy, you're working with text. And when I left mouse click on screen, my text comes up, and so does my properties box with everything I can do to text as it stands, as text. Now text is very different from designs. It's digitized very differently. And the software sees it as a different type of entity. So a lot of times we'll want to do something with text and realize that function is not available. Well, we'll look at why and how to circumvent that. So right now I can come into my box right here and I can type in Floriani is great. And I'm going to put Kathy said so. Okay, so first off, we're going to put what we want in our box. Now we're also going to pick what's the height of our text. Let's just make this text 1/2 inch tall. Spacing, we'll discuss that. And line spacing is going to be the spacing between the two lines of text. We've got all fonts here. Now if I drop down my all fonts, I have within the software itself, before we do anything extra, we have between the options and the fonts that are in there, we probably have 225, 230 fonts that are available to us at any time. That's a whole lot of fonts. We also have it broken down by category. So if you wanted to look at fonts that were all block fonts or script fonts, if I pick script, I want you to notice, do you see how it whittles down my list? So if I wanted a script font, I could look within the script very easily here. And script has a 2-letter designation, SC. So if you see it in the overall list, anytime you see a script font, it's going to have SC in front of it. Okay, so let's keep going. Now the next one is outline. Outline fonts have an O in front of them, and outline fonts have options. So right now we've selected Breezy. Now you'll notice the style is default, but with this font itself, I can drop down and say, I want to make Breezy a run font. So when I apply that, this has become a run. Let's fit this to screen. Okay. So now it's a run font. I can come in here and say I want it to be a satin stitch, apply. So there we go. So now as a satin stitch, now what I want you to notice is, let's zoom into this so we don't get any confusion here. It has a satin stitch, but it's running on each side. It's running that line, that outline around the font. So this isn't making it a single satin stitch font. It's putting a satin stitch on each edge. So if we went back to our run, it has turned this run into a satin stitch. So you're going to have a satin stitch going up this side and coming back down this side. Now I can say I want it to be an applique, which again is going to be a satin on both sides, but it's going to have our applique features. Now this is too small to do that, but we're going to click it anyway, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So now this is going to be an applique font, which means it's going to stitch out a placement line, a tack down line, a finish line, placement line, tack down line, finish. So it's going to continue in that vein all the way across. All right. So that's if we've got this as a applique. Or we can make this a default with run, which means it will have the default that we started with, but now it's added a run stitch around the edge. Let's see if we can zoom in and see that. So you can see now it's added a run stitch around the edge of that font. So anytime you see an outline font, you're going to find that you have several options. Some have more options than others because some fonts lend themselves to more options. Now I'm just going to go back to default like we came in, and we're going to talk about, we're going to move on. We'll come back to this in a moment. Now, we also have stitch fonts. Now, stitch fonts are fonts that we have created. Either we've added them in through our font importer, and I will show you that. You can add in fonts to Floriani that you have purchased. You may have purchased a design CD, and it's Happy Cowgirls, and they're in a PEZ format, or an ART format, or an EXP, or a VIP. Those are designs in the shape of letters, but the software only sees them as designs. It doesn't see them as keyboard lettering. So when we want to use them as keyboard lettering, we don't have that option. Well, now with our font importer, you can bring those in. So you can add to your library. Those will be stitch fonts. Those are ones you've added. Small. These small fonts are anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to a little over 1/4 of an inch tall, because sometimes we need those tiny little small fonts, and they have a 60 in front of them. Now that 60 is for 60 weight thread. When we're doing a font that small, we don't want to use 40 weight, because in thread, the bigger the number, the skinnier the thread. So just remember, I'm a size 0 in thread. So we could use our Quilter Select thread. Our embellished division has Flawless, which is a 60 weight thread as well. So 60 weight thread is a lot skinnier. So when you're doing tiny, tiny little fonts, you want to use 60 weight thread so you don't have the bulk of the 40. So those are for small. And now a lot of times we use these when we're trying to copy a logo or put some small lettering on a recipe card or something. We'll use a smaller font. Well, these are geared to stitch out beautifully at those tiny sizes. We also have block, self-explanatory, and you'll see a BL in front of any block fonts. We've already looked at script. Run fonts are just that. They're run stitches. So they have an RN in front of them, and they're single stitch fonts. So those always have a place. And of course, we've got our applique fonts, and we have our handwritten look fonts. So we have them also. Besides looking through the whole list, you can look within categories. We're going to go back here to our outline fonts, and we're going to stay with our breezy here. So now that we have this up, you can see I've got these letters because I've been changing around. They're 0.79 inches tall. I could change that to 0.5. Apply. So now they're half an inch tall. Now here's the other thing. Let's start looking at what's in here for us to do. Spacing, this spacing is the space between letters. Okay, now this has great spacing. Sometimes I don't like how the script may be spaced out, or I might want less space in between letters, and this is where you would change that. Now if I wanted these closer, I could do a -1 millimeter, and these letters would get closer together. As you can see, that kind of pulled it in. If I wanted more space with them, I would go to a positive number. So I'm going to say 2. So you're going to see the spacing gets great in between them. So I'm going to put it back at 0 because it was good at 0. But sometimes we want to change that spacing for look, and we don't want to have to move each and every single letter. Now, line spacing. This is important because I want you to notice when I put Floriani is great, Kathy said so, I told it to align all my text to the center. Well, you will notice that our G overruns our D. So that is not going to look good stitched out. I need more space. Now this is by percentage, and this percentage has to do with this font itself. Every font has a different algorithm that puts it together, different spacing in between, different spacing between the lines. So this 1% does not equal, I can't give you a number and say that this is equal to 0.4 millimeters or whatever. What this is it's a visual for me. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, whoops, I clicked too hard on it. I apologize. I'm going to say I want about 40% instead of 25. And you can see now my D clears my G just fine. And I would just keep typing in a number till it looked the way I want it to look. After all, embroidery is about the visual. It's not about the mathematical correctness. Something can be mathematically correct, but visually unattractive. So we want it attractive to our visual. Now this width. Notice I don't have any control points on here because I've clicked on, clicked off. If I want all my control points to come back to how it is when the lettering comes in, I'm going to go back to my T and click on it. And it's going to put all my control points because this is where we need to get started. Once we've picked an alphabet, if we want to work with it in any way, this is where we start. Now let's look at what does all this mean. The blue diamonds and everything is color-coded and shaped, so it's easy for you and me to work together. Because all I can say is blue diamond. If I say kerning icon and you're frustrated already, that's the last words you want to hear. You want to hear blue diamond. Because that, we all recognize color and shape immediately without any thought. Now what this does is it changes the space in between the letters. But this is way cool in Floriani. Because let's say I want to change the space in between. I think there's too much spacing between the word Floriani is and great. Now I've told these to center, to stay centered over each other. So I'm going to grab this kerning icon and I want you to notice everything to the right of it hangs together. As I move this closer to the word Floriani, do you notice Kathy said so moves? Because it's got to stay centered with the top. Now I'm going to move great in just a little bit. So everything behind that G moves together. So I'm not having to move each letter individually when I correct something between one or two letters. Sometimes you'll get alphabets that have a V and an A. And the V and the A next to each other will look weird. It'll look like there's way too much space. Let's come in here and let's find one. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Valentine. Let's type that in and let's apply Valentine. Now in this alphabet it's not too bad, but you can see it kind of looks weird. It looks like the V is disconnected from the rest, and it's not because the V doesn't have a script, it's because there's a lot of space down here. So by clicking on it, I could move that A in closer till it looks visually more balanced. Now, mathematically, it's incorrect. This is too close because it's measuring from the outer edge of this V to the outer edge of the A. But what I care about is it looks good visually. So notice, if in our old way that we used to do, or most of our home softwares, if I move the A, then I got to move the L, then the E, then the N, and it makes us crazy. Now, something else that's real cool in here is, let's look, before we talk about the gold box, we're going to talk about our outside controls. Now, this is one of my favorites. This arrow at the bottom right-hand corner. Sometimes, for instance, a pocket. When you're putting a design above a pocket, let's say the pocket's 4.5 inches wide. The rule is the stitching must take up a minimum of 1/3 of the mathematical space. So if it's 4.5 inches wide, we know that that word that we put above that pocket needs to be wider than 1.5 inches. But what if the guy's name is J. Schmo? That's going to be really narrow. So I may need to make that name longer, but I still want it to be 1/2 inch tall. So I don't want to, as I make it bigger, longer, I don't want it to get taller. So if I use the arrow at the bottom right-hand corner and I pull, do you notice my letters are staying the same height exactly? Now let's see, do they look good? Did it distort any of my letters by just making it wider and not taller? No. The software changes the spacing in between. It changes the width of the letters. It changes everything, and this is a font. It works different than a design. If I did that in a design, what would happen? If I bring a design in, let me just grab a design. Let me grab something. Let's just go in here and see if I can find something small. Let's see what I can find here. Okay, here's a perfect, let's bring in Happy Father's Day. Okay, if I grab this mustache, let me ungroup it. Anytime we bring a design in from the library, it's grouped. Let me grab this mustache. Now, if I make this wider and I don't make it taller, I have distorted this mustache, correct? It now is losing its shape. If we're grabbing this hat, you can see if we make something wider without making it taller, it loses its perspective. It loses its look. So we're going to go ahead and take this out. And that's all text, so it would work like text. And see, that's the cool thing about text, is it is made different to hold its integrity proportionately, whereas that mustache didn't hold its integrity proportionately. Now, by the same token, if his name was Aloysius Pendergast, I could move this in a lot shorter, and did it hold did it hold all of its integrity? Yes. It didn't obscure the A, the E, it didn't stretch, it didn't distort anything. That is a function of text. That is not a function of a design. So keyboard lettering is real important, that you have features that are specific and only specific to text. So with this, I can come in here and change that, which I think is wonderful and huge. Now let's look at some of these other ones. Okay, now if I pick the arrow in the upper left-hand corner, that is going to change it proportionately, width and height proportionately. Okay, so if I do need to make my text bigger, both height and width, I can do so very easily. Now you'll see this little diamond at the bottom left-hand corner. This helps us lean our text, to kind of italicize it or lean it for just decorative purposes, what we want to do. I might want to put my Valentine to sleep on the job. I want him laying down. So you can come in here and you've got lots of control. If I use the squares, this will stretch my text like a pennant. And this is only applicable to text. It's real important to understand where you've got the ability to do stuff in text that you don't have with other parts of your designs. So I can change that into a look of a pennant. Now, anytime you start going and you get crazy and you want to go back to where you started, you can right mouse click and you can reset that frame and it will start over where we had it. Now we have these circles right here. These are to allow us to elasticize. So I'm going to stretch this in a circle. It looks like a circle. I'm going to stretch it in a circle. So I can make my Valentine cookies smile for you. I can make them happy Valentine cookies. Okay, let's reset our frame again. So it's easy to get back to the beginning. Now let's talk about these gold boxes. Now this is an amazing, well, before I go to gold box, let's go to our rotate. Let's go to one more outside piece. This blue circle is for rotate, and it rotates from the center axis. It's the center of your design. You're not rotating from an end point. You're rotating around the center, okay? So you can rotate. And if it's curved lettering, you'll rotate it still from the center axis, but the curve will rotate, and we'll look at that in a moment. So that's my rotate. Now let's look at these gold boxes. When text is on a baseline, this is a baseline. This frame has a line across that it's stuck to. It'll go right and left on it. I can move it back and forth. But in Floriani, since this is a commercial software, I can actually treat the letters as individual once I bring them up. I could grab this V, move it off, pull it out of the baseline, make it very large. We'll look at what I just did too. And now I can take this Allentine and I can move these letters by themselves doing something different. If I just want a different fun look, I can do that now because I can treat every letter as an individual. So that is pretty cool. You've got a whole lot of control in your lettering to make things look different than everybody else's. So you could have some real fun with your Valentine. Now you notice I made that V really big. I made it tall enough to hold all these other letters going down the side, however I want to put them. Okay, so there's my Valentine. Now let's look at what happened. If I put my cursor over this alphabet, it tells me the maximum height for this satin stitch should be 3 inches. It shouldn't be any larger than 3 inches in this alphabet. Why? Because that satin is going to get too big. Well, we now have this 5.5 inches tall. So let's go to 3D and see what happened to us. Oh, well, a lot of our satin stitch doesn't stitch. Why? Because the revolution of your bobbin is about 1/2 inch. When your bobbin turns and the needle goes down, picks up the thread and turns, when you stretch a satin stitch, because this is supposed to be one single stitch, when you stretch it too big for that revolution of the bobbin, you may have heard this with your machine. You'll make a letter bigger and it will go chick. You'll see it pick up the thread and then it goes chick, chick, chick. When it comes back up, there's no thread. It doesn't pick up the second side. That's because of the revolution of the bobbin. It's impossible. It's mechanically impossible. So when you get satin stitches over a certain width, not only will they not stitch, but even if this did stitch, this stitch is, I'm going to get my measuring tool and I'm going to come across this. This is almost 1 inch wide. Okay, and it's telling me you got to use a fill here. This is not going to fly. A satin stitch that wide, if it did catch, all it would do is gape and pull. It wouldn't fit next to the fabric and go down. So there's rules about satin. Satin stitches shouldn't be any more narrow than 1.5 millimeters, and they shouldn't be any wider than 8 millimeters. Okay, that's pretty much the rule. So when you get bigger than 8 millimeters, when you make a design larger, now you've got to deal with that satin stitch. So in this case, my software sees this as one entity of text. So anything I do to one piece of it, I'm going to do to all of it. Well, there's nothing wrong with my Allentine. It looks good. And let's pretend this is exactly how I wanted it to look. It's finished. It's good. but my V is not going to stitch. So when you get into this place, let's go back to text. Let's get it as text. If I needed to change everything, if I did the whole word and made it big, I could come right here and change every letter to a fill. It's too wide for a satin, so I could come here and change it to a fill. But if I don't want to mess with Allentine, see, if I change it to a fill now, let's go change it to a fill. Now let's use a smooth fill and apply. Not only did I change the V, well, I brought it back too. Let me see. Not only did I change the V, I changed the whole bunch into a fill. And see, I don't like that. That's not what I wanted. Undo is my friend. Let's go back to where we were. Now, what I need to do here is I need to take this lettering and tell the software I'm no longer considering it lettering. I want to treat it as all separate designs, separate pieces. So I'm going to right mouse click on the word text and I'm going to break it up. The minute I break up that text, I no longer have lettering. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 designs, 9 pieces of a design that looks like lettering. And I'm going to leave my Allentine. It's perfect. But now I'm going to select that V, and now I can turn that V into a different fill. Let's go ahead, and I'm still going to go with smooth for this, and I can apply that. Now I'm not going to have any trouble with my design stitching out. And where this really gets important is when you're doing things like big monograms, because monograms have to be certain sizes on a towel or a bath sheet. A monogram needs to be 5 inches tall. Well, there's not a whole lot of fonts in here that can be 5 inches tall and look good as a satin. So by being able to change your fill, and if you didn't like smooth, you could say, well, let's look at what snakeskin looks like. What does that one look like? You could go ahead now and change it. You can come down to the bottom. You could change it to a standard fill, fancy fill, a motif fill. You could start doing all kinds of things, or you can come up here and look at different things you could do to it. So you can come up now and say, you know what, I want this to be a spiral fill. Let's do a spiral. Oh, so you've got so much you can do to text, but now that spiral fill would not have been available had you left this as text, because text has certain properties. So you can see by coming in here and changing it from text to simply breaking up the text, now it's seeing it as segments of a design. It's not seeing it as a piece of text. So that is big. That's huge. So we need to look at how that works and how that goes together. You can have a whole lot of fun with text. Let's get another one. Let's come in and look at something else. Let's bring in a design. Let me see. Let me find a design that let's go to our library. In our library, in case you don't realize, you get 5 new designs every single month with Floriani. Total Control. Let's bring in this guy. There's a design. Okay, so we've got an applique design here that inside it says Happy Thanksgiving. Now, what if I wanted to put some lettering around it? I can come to the T for text, and then I can go to my circle. Again, I'm going to left mouse click on screen, and I'm going to type in, I am thankful. Okay, so now once I've put I am thankful, then I would be looking for my font that I want to use. And I'm going to put this at about 1/2 inch tall, I think. And I'm going to apply it. Now, here's the goodie. Now, I don't like that. Number one, it looks too small. So I'm going to go ahead and make this about 1 inch tall. Let's apply that. Oh, like that much better. Now let's fit this to screen so we can see. Now it decides the radius of this circle. It decides what it's going to do because it wants to make sure it encompasses the design. But we've got full control. Again, if you're looking at your kerning icons, I can make these closer together. Same thing. I can do all of that. I can pull any of these off the baseline. Again, I can come in here and start looking at making it bigger, height and width, or I can come down here and just make it wider without making it taller, or more narrow without making it taller. So you still got the same coverage. But what's different here is our rotate button. See my rotate here? I can rotate this, but I can also change the circumference to bring this in where I want it. So I could put I am thankful. Now I could also come in and I could say, let's get rid of thankful here. Let's just type in happy Thanksgiving. All right, I'm going to apply that. And now I don't have any at the bottom, but I've made this, I had changed the circumference of this. So I can pull this where it's not so round. I'll show you what I'm doing. Because a lot of these are things that confuse a lot of people, and they're always asking, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? Now that I've got that there, I can come in and just select Happy Thanksgiving. And now I can bring it down with that curve. Okay, I can bring the curve back, of course. Put all my stuff back here, and I could bring it in a little tighter if I wanted. Make that curve a little tighter, and still select the letters without their control points, and now I could place it. So you've got lots of stuff you can use. You could use the top, you could use the bottom, you can use them both. You can change the circumference. You can move the letters along the path. I can also change the width. How we change I could say, you know what? That's a little wide. Instead of pushing that little corner arrow, I could come in and say, make this like 80% as wide. So I could pull that in. Oh, I like that much better. I still haven't messed with any of the lettering. I just made it shorter without making it, I've made it more narrow without making it shorter. So I've changed the width and not the height in here. So you can come in and do a whole lot with round. Let's get a new piece of paper. Let's come and look at our text. And let's look at vertical. A lot of times we don't realize things that we lose. Vertical frames are a lot of fun. I could put in here George. Okay, and I might change. Let's change from Breezy. Let's pick a different font for a while. Let's go to Compact Block just to see something different. And I'm going to make this at about, we'll go to 1/2 inch. Apply. So now I've got George up and down. So now I've got it in here. Now again, what if I want it closer together? I can make it closer together. There we go. I can make it lean. I still have all the same control. I could change the line spacing. I can change the width. We can do anything we want here, but I could bring in a golfer and put George by it, or put the word golf. I could come in here and put the word golf. And put a man with a golf club standing next to it. Make my letters as big as I needed to make them. So don't forget, you've got vertical text, and a lot of times that's kind of cool to use, but we don't use it a lot, so we kind of forget that it's there. Let's go ahead and get a couple new pieces of paper here. Let's go ahead and close some of these so we don't get crazy. Sometimes I'll get 20 open here. There we go. So let's continue to look. Now, this next one is cool. This is text on a path. Now let's go, before I pick the text, let's go to my library. Let's pick a design here. Let's come in here. Let's pull in the Shamrock truck. I like this. I think it's a cool design. Now let's say I wanted to put, this isn't the design, this is a picture. Excuse me, I pulled in the picture. Didn't pull in the design. We have a JPEG and we have the design itself. Here's the design. Pulled in the JPEG. There we go. Now I got a design up. Now I want to come in and I want to add text like a rainbow. Maybe I want to do a rainbow text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my text and I'm going to pick on a path. Okay, so now I'm going to left mouse click and I'm going to look at the paths I can choose from. And just so you know, you could also create your own paths. And that's how people get text to flow around a design. They just create the path for it to go on. But this is how it's going to go. I'm going to put gold at the end of the rainbow. Let's put that in. Okay, and I'm going to do that, and I will apply that. And so you can see now I can say, maybe I want that to be a little bigger. Maybe I want my text a little bigger. I can also come in here and change how much curve this has. We can change the curve in here. We can edit this. So if I want to edit the baseline here, I can edit the baseline and I could say, I want to pull this curve in a little bit here. And I want to go ahead and make it real. And I might want to come in here and edit the baseline. I might want to pull this out some. Might want to pull this out more. But again, you get the idea. We can come in here and play. I could make it wave over the cab of the truck. Then I could come in and say, let me grab that text. And we have a feature called Rainbow that can be purchased. It's a program. But if you own Floriani Total Control, it comes into Floriani Total Control. Let me just go ahead and pick a rainbow theme just for fun. And you could change that to rainbow. But what I'm getting at is you have so much flexibility within your lettering that you don't realize what you've got as far as how much there is in here. Let's go back to text. Let's go ahead and talk about monogram text. I'm going to left mouse click on screen. Now monogram is styles. Of course, here you can see I've got a large center letter, smaller right and left. In our monogram, you can use any alphabet, any font for a monogram. They won't come in monogram style. You would have to work with them if you used them outside the monogram module. But this has told the text to come in as monogram. And so it's done it. Now there are in here, we have all of the standard monograms, number one. So these are monograms you're used to seeing. And they're not always big center letter, small right and left. Sometimes it's just the style that the letters are turned. And if you can see decor here, that means you've got options here to dress up that lettering. Okay, so you can see, and it matches the style of the letter. So where these letters are all the same size, it's the way they've been angled to do monogramming. You've also got lots of ones in here that don't have styles. The reason being, there are lots of alphabets that look good as a monogram and fit well together. There's a lot of fonts that just don't make good monograms because they don't look well stacked as a monogram. Then once you're here, of course, since you have full control, I could come in here and then I could even further change my monogram to match something I want. So monogramming has some really cool styles that have been chosen because they do well as monograms. And then let's come back in here to text. And let's look at our next category, which is imported true type font. Now, I'm going to type in Floriani here. Okay, so I'm going to type in Floriani. Then I can go select from any true type font that's in my computer. And we are all different, just so you know. Different computers hold different fonts depending on the programs you have installed. Sometimes programs add stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Lucinda. I don't know, it just sounds like a good name. And I'm going to do demi bold, whatever that means, and say okay. Now when I bring in Floriani, it comes in that font. But this is not embroidery. This is a true type font. All it is artwork in the shape of Floriani. So this is not keyboard lettering. Even though it allows us to access it from here and will allow us to turn it into stitches, it still does not have the control points, doesn't have all the options I have with a keyboard font. But sometimes we need a weird font and we just want to do a word. So if I've got Floriani here, I now can use all my cool one-click wonders along the bottom. I could say make it a run. I could say make it a motif. I could say that motif is way too much for this. Let's make it a smaller motif. So I could create a motif font. I could come in and say make it a steel stitch, just a balanced satin. I could come in and make it a steel run, where that means I've got a run and I've got, you've got some options here. I could tell it the steel first or the run first. Right now I've got the steel first, so the run's on top of it. Then with a run stitch, I could say, well, make it a motif. And I could say apply that. So that would be on top of that steel stitch. So you've got a whole lot of fun in there. Then I could come down all the way down through the first ones are all runs. The second grouping is our satins. So when I'm doing lettering, I could say, well, let's make this an auto satin. So that would make it a pretty easy satin. Let's do a radial satin. Ooh, that looks horrible. Let's do a contour satin. Not much better. But I can come in here and play. Let's 3D so we can see what's going on. Not all are going to work, correct? No, they're not all going to work. An auto satin's going to work because it's going to try and follow the way the lettering goes. Now I could come in and make it a fill. I could make it a fancy fill. I could come in and make it a wave fill. And I could change the distance in the wave so it looks cool. You know, it's got some kind of open fill. And I don't like the fact it doesn't have edges. So what am I going to do? I'm going to right mouse click copy, right mouse click paste, and change that second set to a run stitch. So now I've got that fill with the run around it. You can do so very, very much. I could grab all of this, come down, and I could turn it into an applique. So I could turn this into an applique. It's thinking about it. Now it's made it an applique. I can come down. You see this gold star? A gold star will turn anything into artwork. I could turn it back into artwork. The cool thing about this is you can also cut. So if you've got a digital cutter and you want to cut vinyl, all the true type fonts in here, you can set them up, save them as SVGs, and cut them out. So lots and lots of cool stuff with lettering and fonts in our software. Now let's look at a real cool feature that we've added in for you that I love. And it's called Font Play. Now you notice our floating toolbar. It always has the most popular choices on it. Okay. And once you choose something, for instance, let's go back. Let's go back here. Let's go back here and let's turn this into a run stitch. Okay, so now notice once that was done, all these changed, doesn't it? It says, do you want to undo? Do you want to change the shape of that letter? And every time you click on a feature, it gives you the next features you would use. So that's pretty cool. I really like this floating toolbar. But I want to go to Font Play. Now with Font Play, it's set up a lot like our text box, in that I can look at all fonts, and I can look at embroidery, or I can come and look at only true type fonts. So all those true type fonts in my computer are right here. If I wanted to look at what something, if I wanted to create a word out of, just do one word, I don't need a keyboard font, I just want one word to do, and I need something that's in Broadway. So I could come in here and see what it would look like in Broadway. But I'm going to go back to embroidery. And these are all the embroidery fonts that are in my computer. Now default, if it says default here, it's the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, because that uses every letter in the alphabet. However, I'm not going to stitch out this phrase. Sometimes I'm looking just for a specific letter. So if I go to letters and I'm looking to copy something and I'm looking for a certain type of A, I can now see every single character that's going to stitch out in Asgard. How many times have you asked for that? Well, all I can see is how the ABC stitches. What if I want to see all the letters? Well, here you go. I can come in and see, well, what does it look like in bamboo? How about Berlin Sands? How about bold blended? So I can go down and look at anything I want to look at, and I can look at it with the whole alphabet, showing me every character that will stitch. It'll give me a minimum and maximum height, both in inches and in metric. So I can see that. Now I really love this custom, because custom lets me type in the phrase I'm going to be using. Sometimes one phrase looks great in something, but it doesn't look good in another font. They're all different. So if I go to Floriani is great, Kathi said so, and say OK, now I can see what those letters are going to look like in that specific font. So I can say, what do I want to see in this? How do I want to see what this looks good? How's this going to look the best? So we have this available for us to look at. Really cool stuff. See how it's going to look. Ooh, I like that. Effie. That's pretty cool. So we can go and see what we like. Once it's here, we can import that onto the screen, and we can import it onto a screen that already has a design on it. So that's nice. Now you notice I don't have any control points, do I? That's okay. Just go to the T for text, click on it. All your control points are there. Now I'm going to put my spacing at 0. It spaces everything out in Font Play so you can see it well. But now I'm going to change my spacing, maybe my height, see what else I'm going to do to this. You notice this is one that the line spacing in Effie is already 50%, so I didn't have to worry about the line spacing here with the G and the D coming over each other. So having Font Play is a really cool feature. And it also does like the software in that I could look at all fonts. I could look at just run fonts. So if I wanted to see what something looks like in the flatliner, the line block, line script, plain print, you can see what it looks like by going through there. Again, script fonts. So now I can look at what's going to look like in our script fonts, what looks good. So I think this is a pretty cool feature for looking at your fonts. All right, so we have Font Play. Now let me show you one other feature that is just gonna blow your socks off here that is real cool. Let me get a new piece of paper. We have a feature called Font Importer. Under our tools, you have Font Importer. Now what this allows you to do is those fonts you purchase. Now they have to be in a design format. So I'm not talking about Monogram, Wizard, BMX fonts. I'm talking about fonts that you bought that were in a DST, EXP, PES, ART, EXP, VIP, HUS. Anytime it's a design font, design file, you can use Font Importer. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to, let me go to, I believe it's on desktop. And I'm going to go to purchased fonts. Okay, so I'm going to pick and purchase fonts and I'm going to pick Tickle and I'm going to say okay. Now it's going to bring those fonts into here. Now these happen to be in a DST format. I buy a lot of things in a commercial format. And just for your information, every machine but a Bernina will read a DST format. Okay, Bernina's commercial format is EXP. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this A and I'm going to move on down to the Z, right? Hold my shift key and select all uppercase. Right? So I've got, oh, now wait a minute. I didn't tell it I wanted to make a font. So I have selected the font. I'm going to do a new font and I'm going to name this PC Progressive Classroom 31. Now I can do all this. I apologize. I forgot to make a font. So now that I've got that, I've selected A to Z and I'm going to click uppercase A to Z. Now it's telling me the M will be the reference letter. Yep, that's fine. And now what it's going to do is it's going to place these in the keyboard slots that a capital A will bring up an A, capital B will bring up a B. So it's placed these all in place. Now what I'm going to do is I can see those are all in. Let's slide this down so you can see that. Now I'm going to work with my lowercase. So I'm going to start with my lowercase a. I'm going to come down to my lowercase z, holding my shift key. So I select them all. I'm going to tell it, put in my lowercase. Now what it's doing is it's taking these designs and it's turning them into keyboard fonts. They're no longer a design in the shape of a W. It is now a true font. This is huge that we can do this. Now I'm going to come on down. Let me move this down some. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to do numbers. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to select my numbers. And I'm going to select 0 through 9, holding my shift key. And of course it's going to go in the 0 through 9 slots. And now, of course, I could add in punctuation as I wanted to. You can add in as much as you want. I might want to just pull that there, pull my exclamation mark down and put it in. I might not want everything. I might want to pick and choose what I want, but you get the idea. Now that they're in here, it has brought designs in. Now I want you to see this blue line right here. See the blue line? That is the baseline. That's the line that the bottom of the letters sit on. So I can see this A is meant to scroll below the baseline, right? So I'm going to click on this A and I'm going to move it down. And I can actually pull it if I want, till its little foot touches the baseline. I'm going to say the same thing. I don't like how this H does. I'm going to pull it down. The G has to come down, right? That's how it's made. The K is doing the same thing. Just so you get the idea. Now, if you miss a letter, if you're moving letters around in here, you want to do something different, you move a letter around, and you miss one, you can come back and edit this all you want. But I'm just going to come in and do the ones that I see right here. Everything's looking good. Everything's looking great here. Oops, Q doesn't look good. But this is the coolest feature, because now all those things that you purchased that you wanted to bring in, you don't have to bring in file, insert design, file, insert design. You don't have to do that anymore. I think this one was supposed to be it. You don't have to do that anymore. you can now put them all in and they will act as keyboard fonts. How cool is this? So I can come in, good, say I'm happy. I can save this. So now it's saved. So I can go in and now use this. So if I go to text, and I'm going to type in Floriani, and I'm going to go to Stitch Fonts. Remember, that's a Stitch font. And PC31, there it is. I'm going to apply that. And there is my Floriani. It is now keyboard lettering. It's got all my control points. I can treat it as such. I could have used lowercase letters, uppercase letters. How cool is this? So now all of those that you have, and you can see I didn't move the N, nor did I move the R down. You can see that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to Tools. I'm going to go to Font Importer. Okay, I want to edit a font, and I want to edit PC31. Okay, so this is the one I want to edit. No, I don't want to remove you. I just want to edit you. Oh, select font. I'm sorry. Tell you, sometimes I can get rid of any fonts by going that way. So I'm going to go to PC31. It's going to bring all of this back in here. Now I can go back and I can see where this N I didn't bring down. And I can't remember what other letter I didn't like. Let's see. The R. So I can come in here and go down to my little R. See that it was wrong. There we go. Now I can save that. Close. And now I can apply. And now you notice those two letters move down into space. So you can bring in fonts, you can delete fonts, you can add fonts, you can rework them if you need to. Just remember, when we're working with fonts, remember there are times when we must turn them into stitches. So I'm going to show you just one here. I'm going to go back to text, regular text. I'm going to click on screen. I love this font for monogramming, for single letter monograms on towels. It looks so nice. And it is called Manner. And I want to go to Manner. And I told you that if I have a single font, it needs to be 5 inches tall. Well, this one I already know at 4 inches is kind of come out above 5, just by the way the font's made. Now let's look at this font. Okay, so let's look here and see what our problem is. Now the first thing I do is when I see a wide satin, even if I don't 3D it, I can see that's pretty wide. So I'm going to come in, whoops, and I am going to grab my ruler. Right? So measure the widest parts of your satins. Measure them. And this tells me right away. So almost 1/2 inch wide, use a fill. Come on down here. Use a fill. You're going to see that I need a fill in here. So let's take this font and let's go ahead, because I don't have any other on screen, right? So now I can just go to my fill and change it. I like it in snakeskin. I'm going to apply that. I think that looks really, really good. Now, I told you sometimes with fonts, there's things you can't do because the software holds it as a font. So now this is a font. It's finished. I like it. But you notice when I click on it, all of these options are gone. I have lots of options missing up here. So again, what I'm going to do here, now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to break up that text. The minute I do that, notice all the options that come alive, because now it's treating it as a design. And now since I'm going to embroider this on a towel, I'm not going to want fluff coming up in between. I'm not going to want the fluff coming up here. I want it to hold down nicely. So I'm going to come up here and simply turn on my auto nap blocker. What that's going to do is it's going to create a fill beneath my letter that's light, but it's going to hold down the nap of that towel. Then this will stitch over the top of it. Now see, the auto nap blocker is made for designs. It doesn't work with lettering. So we have to break up the text so our auto nap blocker can work. Because again, when our software sees something as text, it has features such as being able to drag it wider without making it taller. It's got a lot of features that regular designs don't have. But then there's things we can do with regular designs we can't do with text. So our answer is to break up that text when it's exactly as we want it. And I will tell you up front, not 100% of the text design, the text will break up perfectly. Sometimes you'll get one that just has to stay text because you really can't do much with it when you break it up. Now, as long as you're doing it within the text, you're fine, such as turning it into a fill. But there are some fonts you'll find that when you break them up, they do weird things. So on those, there's always going to be one, there's one in every room that's going to give you a problem. So I hope I've given you a good basis on text. Talked about a lot of the things our text can do, showed you our font importer, showed you our font play. We can have a whole lot of fun, and text is a biggie. So I hope you get in there, jump in, play with some of those baselines that I was talking about, the baselines that you can pick. Let's go real quick just so you can get an idea here. I'm going to go ahead and pick straight text just for a moment. And I'm going to write, that's fine. My text is fine. So I've got this, and I'm going to tell you it's on a baseline. So if I right mouse click, we're text on a baseline here. Now I want to come in here and I want to change the path. This is just a straight path. I'm going to change the path. Now this is the path that it's running on. That's our baseline. So now if I wanted to come in here and say right mouse click, I'm going to edit this baseline now. Now I can add points. I can delete points. I can smooth it out. Now I can create my own baseline by just telling it I want to edit the path that this text is on. That gives you, but you still have all the control, right? I can still do this. I can still rotate. I can still do everything else, but I can create my own. So if you're trying to get text to flow around a design or something, how easy is this? I hope you enjoyed this section of text with Floriani. I look forward to seeing you again next month. We're going to work on some more pieces of the Floriani Total Control software. Have an amazing month. I look forward to seeing you again next month for Progressive Classroom number 32.